Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our fourth and final episode in this recent series that I've been doing with my good friend Pierce DeLuna, of course, also known as First and Tuna, where we gather different perspectives from two different reporters on a variety of topics that are affecting the Los Angeles Rams. I, of course, am representing the Los Angeles Rams on SI, which you can check out all of our articles at www.si.com/NFL/Rams on SI. And you can check out all of Pierce's work at First and Tuna. I come from of course, the beat writer side, unbiased journalism. Have to see the team for what it is, as someone who is associated but also removed from the situation. Pierce comes from a different area where he has been heavily invested in this team for a long time, is able to provide a bit more history, a deeper perspective on how the moves the Rams are making, how this is similar to the past or which way is different, so on and so forth. And he can provide unique takes and perspectives on this topic that we are going to discuss today, and that is potential Stafford successors. Who could lead the Rams after Matthew Stafford says goodbye? We're going to break this up into three different segments because there's a variety of quarterbacks. So the first one is free agent quarterbacks who have a connection to Sean McVay that can come in this season to serve as a backup and a potential starter in the event Matthew Stafford needs to take time away for whatever reason. We're then going to talk about potential projects, either for this season or after this season, the Rams could bring in, and mold as a potential Stafford successor. And then finally, we're going to talk about quarterbacks currently under contract who could become available around the timeline which Matthew Stafford would retire and could come in immediately and have success instantly in this Rams offense. Once again, for the fourth time, Mr. Pierce, First and Tuna, how are you doing today?
Again, like I always tell you, man, I got to talk Rams football with Brock from Rams on SI. Blessed. I'm blessed.
I appreciate it, but not as blessed as these gentlemen's bank accounts have been and will be. Obviously, all these guys make quarterback money, but NFL money is great. NFL quarterback money is the greatest. Honestly, there's probably no better money than NFL quarterback money unless you're an owner. And to be a backup in the NFL, it's hard work, but it's also essentially an office job for the most part that you're getting paid millions of dollars to do. However, these guys provide valuable depth and experience, as shown this season with Jimmy Garoppolo when he was the backup, of course, running the Rams offense in training camp and throughout preseason, fine-tuning the offense so that when Matthew Stafford returned, the offense is ready to go. And to Garoppolo's credit, he did all this hard work, did not complain about it once, embraced the opportunity. And then when it was time for Stafford to come in, Garoppolo was totally on board with the plan. And when Stafford stepped on the field, he stepped back and served his role as a backup, did so in a phenomenal way throughout the entire season, really defined what a backup is supposed to do at all the top marks. But of course, there's a vacancy this year, and while Stetson Bennett could become the next backup, we'll see what happens with that. But in regards to potentially filling the hole, who would you like to see in terms of quarterbacks who have had a relationship with Sean McVay in the past come in to be the backup in 2026?
Yeah, man. I got one dream. You mentioned him already. We watched them both at camp. We were both honestly wowed by a lot of things that Jimmy G was doing. It's the easiest plug and play. He's a free agent. I know he had some discussions with LaFleur. They didn't. He hasn't signed with Arizona. They went different routes. So now Jimmy G's seems like Rams should be the front runner. It makes the most sense, but you really don't know what does Jimmy want to do. Does Jimmy have aspirations to go lead a team? Does he want to be a bridge guy somewhere? Or is he happy being like the potential veteran heir apparent to Stafford? Like he could be both in one. I have the most confidence in Jimmy, and that's like my number one wish list out of the veterans because already knows the system, fits, easy. And if I need a guy to go play for 4 games, whether it's last season, I said he could start the season 3-1 if Jimmy had to play, or a veteran who's been in the playoffs, can do it if he gets hot, go win you 4 straight playoff games. I want Jimmy G. I see what he can do in the system. I truly believe in him. After that, I need to know what connections Kirk Cousins has to this franchise, whether it's one of the assistant coaches, a former player. There needs to be a string somewhere where you got to turn that stone over. Because when I look at this list of free agents, like you got to go down to Carson Wentz. How much in the tank does Carson Wentz have still? And does he want to come back to the Rams to be that backup again, like he has before? Does Kirk Cousins have it in him to learn this new system and be the guy? Again, you got two old guys running this franchise. After that, like you got fan favorite, like I love Tyrod Taylor, but is he doing it? Trey Lance is another free agent guy, but that starts fitting the mold of a project a little bit with Trey Lance. And I don't know. The one thing that I keep reminding myself is the quarterback's coach and Nate Schillhouse being chosen as OC. Quarterback coach is staying primarily in the QB room. So you have someone there that if the Rams decide they want a project as a backup, you got resources there. Someone who will dedicate time to work with said quarterback. If your QB coach is the OC, you're basically like, hey, the veterans, you're good. Stafford runs the room. But because you have a coach in there, it does leave the door open for some projects. And you want me to list off some project guys, or do you want to lead into that?
No, not yet. And because I'll wrap up
Yep.
this segment real quick. First, when it comes to Kirk Cousins, there is fortunately not to the Rams organization specifically, but to Sean McVay specifically, is that connection. Cousins was the first legitimate quarterback to run his system with the Washington Commanders back a long time ago, 2014.
Man, what a pull. Yeah. Totally forgot that. What a pull. Good memory.
Thank you. Listen, when it comes to sports knowledge, I always scored an A when it came to the important subjects of math and chemistry and all that good stuff. right in the toilet. So hey, I'm glad it paid off for me in adulthood, because it definitely didn't pay off in my first 18 years of life in schooling. But when it comes to Kirk Cousins, obviously there's that connection over there. But that was a long time ago, many throws ago, many years of not all this wear and tear ago. And I'll be honest with you, I don't believe in Kirk Cousins. I'm sorry to say it. For one brief moment, I believed when he was in Atlanta for those first 5 weeks, and then it was horrific after that. Obviously, not only did he have experience in the McVay offense with McVay in Washington, he did so again in Minnesota with Kevin O'Connell, again in Atlanta with Zach Robinson. So he does have tremendous experience in multiple versions of this. But when it comes down to a guy that can simply drop back and pull the trigger, I don't trust him to be able to make the throw in the necessary times. And I also don't trust the Rams offense to be able to create a system that would allow a player like Cousins to thrive in the same type of sense for which I once viewed Sam Darnold, and have since changed my opinion based on what I saw this past season. There was a moment this past season with Darnold, who I have not been high on for most of his professional career, where I believed in him. And that was the regular season comeback by the Seahawks against the Rams. That moment when Shaheed took the ball back for the punt return touchdown, and he's fired up and not yelling at Sam Darnold, but brother, we got you. It was that moment. It was that Baker Mayfield 2022 moment where Mayfield always talks about that being the first time he had a coaching staff believe in him. I truly believe, even though Minnesota loved him, I get all that, they still let him go. That moment from Shaheed was the first time in Darnold's career where he had teammates. I was like, brother, we got you. We believe in you. Lead us to victory. And what did he do? Go on a remarkable run. Not only did they go on and win that game, even though there's a controversial 2-point conversion, Darnold still completed 3 straight 2-point conversions and was a primary factor in 2 touchdowns in that game, and then obviously defeats the 49ers. It does more defensive effort, defeats the 49ers in the regular season finale, blows them out again in the playoffs, demolishes the Rams defense in the postseason and its championship game, and does exactly what he needs to do in the Super Bowl in order to be victorious. He was confident. His fundamentals have always been great. That's never been the Achilles heel. It's always been decision-making. And the offense was simplified and structured in a way that made the most out of his strong suits. I don't believe that those factors will ever exist for Kirk Cousins in Los Angeles. Either the scheme will be too much for him and he won't be able to make the throw. The defense is going to be on him, and not in the same way that it's the whole la-di-da, let's do this. more like, brother, we just had Matthew Stafford. What is going on here? And there's not that long-term camaraderie where there is with Jimmy Garoppolo to understand that, hey, this is not Matthew Stafford. This is somebody else. When it comes to Carson Wentz, I'm not really going to go into it. It's just not going to work. I think there's no if, ands, or buts. Anyone with eyes can see that. Holds the ball too long. We saw him in 2023 in that season finale, even though Puka Nacua played so he could go break those rookie records. Did not impress in San Francisco. Did not impress at all, even though he was playing with backups in Kansas City during the season finale for the 2024 season. And then he only shined against the Bengals this year with the Vikings. And let's be real now, the Bengals defense was nothing short of atrocious. So that's why I'm completely out on Carson Wentz. And then when it comes to Jimmy Garoppolo, I think this is the route you have to go. The Rams already said they like him, but they don't like him. They love Jimmy Garoppolo. Like, there's not a more beloved guy outside of Matthew Stafford in that locker room from Jimmy Garoppolo, especially after what they witnessed this year in terms of Jimmy Garoppolo being the ultimate teammate. There was every opportunity for him to maybe try and strike his claim and say, hey, look at me, blah, 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 or try to use that and use his agents as leverage to organize a move to potentially get traded to a team that has a quarterback need. No, he didn't do any of that. He literally just showed up to work, was the best version of himself. Whatever issues was in Vegas with Davante Adams and Jimmy Garoppolo was not in Los Angeles. So that was more of just a Raiders thing, because when I was watching them in OTAs and training camp and everything, and you can attest to this as well, they were hugging each other, dapping each other up. Jimmy Garoppolo ran the ball in. The whole defense is like, nah, Jimmy, you can't do that. Like, we would have cleaned you out. And Jimmy's like, well, shouldn't have left the space. And who was the first guy running to congratulate him? Well, it was Davante Adams. So that just kind of goes to show the character that Jimmy G has. And then, obviously, you do have questions about the throws. He can't throw a deep ball with accuracy. We know that. There are times in which he makes poor decisions. He cannot run this version of the McVay offense. The cool part is no one can, except for like 5 or 6 quarterbacks in existence, in current existence, like right now, can run that offense because it is so pass heavy and it requires so much mental fortitude and accuracy and power and precision with the throw. What Jimmy G does do well is he can run an efficient offense. And that's what we saw in the season finale last season with Michael LaFleur being the play caller. And I think if McVay dives more into those Shanahan run principles in designing an offense for Jimmy Garoppolo, I think that Garoppolo is the only quarterback that has a connection to McVay that would be able to not only sustain a winning product, but be able to get the Rams to the Super Bowl and win it. Keep in mind, Jimmy Garoppolo currently is one of the more successful playoff quarterbacks around. Made it to 2 NFC championship games, won one, should have won the second one if was it Jaquiski Tart that dropped the interception or Tayshaun Gibson? I forget who dropped the interception. Tart. In the championship, he secures that. I think the 49ers go all the way back, score a touchdown, and we're talking about completely different NFL right now. And at the same time, when Brock Purdy got his start, it's because Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt and Jimmy Garoppolo was only playing because Trey Lance got hurt. Jimmy Garoppolo was essentially a pariah in San Francisco at the time, still came in, produced a winning product, more than enough to get the 49ers to where they want to go once Brock Purdy took over. And then for anyone that's questioning some of the videos that are put out there in terms of those joint practices, I was there for them. You were there for, I know the Cowboys one. Were you there for the Saints one?
Not the Saints one, Cowboys one.
So there's a clip out there, Garoppolo throwing a hospital ball to Davante Adams, and Davante just didn't go for it. But there needs to be context behind these 5-6 second clips. 1, joint practice, so it's not even a real game. 2, joint practice, so he's not throwing the ball away because there's no point in doing so. He's just gonna force passes because what's the harm? If it's too crazy, Davante Adams is really gonna stop running, which is what he did. And then the third part is the Rams were playing the Saints later on that year, so they were publicly stating we are going to run the most vanilla offense ever known to mankind in order to not give away any of our tips or tricks. So that kind of clears up that narrative about him a little bit. But when it comes to his leadership and his ability to just commandeer this offense, knocked it out of the park. And that's why I think that he makes the most sense now. I think he makes a lot of sense moving forward, unless there is a major drop-off in his game as he waits for Stafford to retire. Let's move on to the next subject, which is, of course, long-term projects that we think could eventually be that solution for Matthew Stafford. Brother, kick it off.
Woo, let me pull up my list here, man. Got a few guys here. The popular one everyone's talking about. They're talking about Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson obviously was drafted highly. He's a first-round pick. Didn't work out in Indy. I don't think it's fully on him. I know a lot of people are out on him because of the tapping out thing. Bad look. I think you are a product of your environment. And Anthony Richardson being so young with such a limited college experience, going to a system like an Indy where they didn't develop him at all. The NFL has a development problem in general, but certain teams do it worse than others. The Rams are no better. Like the Rams, like when's the last time outside of Jared Goff, like you've in these last few years, they've like developed someone to do anything more than just, hey, be the third string, go run the preseason games with Stetson Bennett. It does give me hope for a project guy, like I said, because the quarterback coach, is it Ragone, right? It's Doug.
Yeah, Ragone.
Yeah, him staying as quarterback coach, that means there's someone there to, I almost say, hold someone's hand, but to actually like work with him and ease him into the system. Because I'm sorry, Stafford probably doesn't need you like 100% of the time. If anything, he's running his own film sessions with the receivers. Richardson, it could work. I could see it. I don't think right now was the time though for Richardson. Another one that does interest me just because Tyler Shough seems to have taken just the reins. He's the guy that seemingly in New Orleans. Spencer Rattler is around there. He's done some good things. He's clearly got the talent. Does the system fit? Does his mentality fit? That part I don't know. I just know that he's a name. He's a possibility. And for a team like New Orleans who needs draft picks, who needs cheap capital to field a potential team, do they want him as a QB2 or do they want a veteran instead? I think he's a potential option. The one that I think it's a pipe dream, but I think there's more than just football. It goes with the name. It goes with the personality, the ability to live in LA, to be under McVay, to not act like a young guy, but to like, hey, I've got some talent, but I need you to be like, just elevate my game and who can handle it and take the lumps. Cleveland Browns have a million quarterbacks that are on their payroll. Who is not expensive that we don't know if he can do it or not because he's playing in Cleveland? It's a mixed bag. You don't know what you're going to get outside of Myles Garrett. What's Shedeur Sanders' future there? And I mean that wholeheartedly. I'm a Shedeur believer. I've talked to Steve Weish on my program about him. Do I think he was a first-round pick? I don't think he really was. Neither does Steve Weish. Steve Weish thinks he was more of like a third or fourth rounder, and everybody, the media, got it wrong. And the NFL guys got it right. I think he needed some time to develop. He wasn't quite ready yet, but clearly he can make some good throws. He's got the moxie to be a franchise quarterback. You need the right system, same as every quarterback. Doesn't matter how damn good you are. Look at Matthew Stafford. I truly believe that if you can bring in someone like a Shedeur Sanders into a program like the Rams, where we love their culture, it doesn't matter who they are. They will fit and abide by the culture. Sean McVay can handle anybody. It doesn't matter how big their name is. I think you can do something there. And I think he's got enough juice and enough confidence that it rubs off on the rest of the team that if he can't even do something physically, the rest of the team is going to have his back. Like you talked about Sam Darnold with Seattle. I think this Rams team is one that would rally around somebody like a Shedeur Sanders, who I think would thrive in a system that relies on run heavy and play action. Something that an aging Stafford, if his arm were to ever like not be 100%, but like 90%, I mean, that system's built for it. And there's a bunch of weapons around there. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I've lost my fastball when it comes to judging quarterbacks from my bedroom here at my desk. But I think those are some names that I think, man, if the Rams got their hands on them, like if we love McVay and this whole system, like you got Cliff Kingsbury, like he's able to handle a bunch of quarterbacks that are more mobile, that are a little bit different from what McVay had. You've got the resources here where you can bring in a young guy and mold him to be a QB2, the future guy. That's just my opinion on that one, man.
Fair enough. A couple quick hits on what you have to say because I really don't have any other players to add to your list. First
Ooh.
off, Dave Ragone, Rams quarterback coach, didn't really have an opportunity to shine in Atlanta when he was offensive coordinator because the Falcons did not have a legitimate quarterback during Arthur Smith's tenure with the Falcons. Then he comes over to the Rams, has a very successful start. Obviously, you've seen his work with Stetson Bennett and how much he has grown. Last season in particular. For me, the big shot OTAs, Bennett couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. It felt like, and then training camp obviously was the beneficiary of getting more snaps because Stafford wasn't on the field, but he was throwing dot after dot after dot. And that translated into those two preseason games he had. Of course, the victory against the Dallas Cowboys and then against the Los Angeles Chargers, despite all the rotations of the rest of the offense, the way he was able to go down and lead them. Obviously, the big throw, but more importantly, the bigger catch by Brendan Presley in order to set up the touchdown-winning reception by True Edwards to end that ball game. Just there's a lot of reasons to believe Ragone can be that guy to really be a true quarterback developer, along with, of course, McVay, Shieldhouse, and the rest of that offensive staff. Going through your list of players, let's talk first about Anthony Richardson. I have it on good authority to say that the Colts are horrific at quarterback development. In terms of quarterback implementation, they're very good at it because they understand X's and O's very well. And before anybody gets on my kid, well, look at Daniel Jones. First of all, Daniel Jones made it to the playoffs with the Giants and won a playoff game. So I don't want to hear anything about Daniel Jones. Yep. Secondly, Daniel Jones went to Duke University, where he was coached by David Cutcliffe, the guy who's the reason why the Mannings are as good as they are. He coached Peyton at Tennessee. He coached Eli at Ole Miss. And he is one of the best quarterback gurus to ever exist on the planet. And he was Daniel Jones's head coach at the collegiate level. On top of that, Jones had, I believe, 7 years of NFL experience before going to the Colts. One of those stops is also the Minnesota Vikings, who, of course, is coached by Kevin O'Connell. A completely different situation to Richardson, who had two different head coaches, Dan Mullen and Billy Napier, during his time at the University of Florida. He's still a very young person. I think he's only 24 right now. Richardson also had to fight for starting reps between Kyle Trask and Emory Jones. And it was one of those situations where it wasn't just like you had to wait your turn. It was more like he was just getting thrown in and pulled out. It was no sense of proper development. Also, not trying to throw a shout out there, but when was the last time the University of Florida developed a quarterback? Like, that's not.
I was just going to say Lagway is going through the same problems that Richardson. Yeah.
I mean, we just can go down the list. Legitimately, the best NFL quarterback was probably Russ Grossman. If I just go off top of my dome. I can't think of another one outside of Rexy that was great in the NFL. And Rexy, let's not dive into that for the sake of this program. And then when you look at Richardson, obviously the tools are there. But when you talk about having a locker room and a culture to really grow behind and mature with, he hasn't had that. And then on top of everything, just geographically, moving out to the West Coast does wonders for any person. It really does.
It does.
Breath of fresh air, new mindsets, new mentality. Emmanuel Forbes is all I'm going to say. I don't care how much anyone talks about him. All I know is that when he lined up against the 2025 NFL Offensive Player of the Year, he put in work. And when tasked going against Shaheed, he put in work then too. So it just kind of goes into everything I'm saying. Spencer Rattler is a very interesting one because, as you mentioned, hasn't had the time to properly develop with the Saints. Obviously, Tyler Show is the QB1 for them moving forward, so he doesn't have much of a future in New Orleans. The Rams did have an opportunity to see Rattler, during their joint practices, so they have a little bit more insight on him. Rattler, I believe, is from Arizona, or at least he went to high school out there, if I'm not mistaken. So obviously, again, the whole West Coast thing. And to me, unfortunately, Rattler has such a negative view on his career because of a show that took advantage of recording high school players, right? Before guys who are not like the kids, right? And whatever happened in high school, it clearly wasn't that big of a deal considering he still went to Oklahoma. I don't think he wasn't expelled or anything like that. And nothing ever more really came out of it. So it was nothing major, but it's kind of affected him his whole career. Obviously, he was brought up to be this great savior at Oklahoma, didn't develop into that. But as a younger player, right? How do you expect to handle when your entire university that's supposed to back you is chanting for the head coach to put in Caleb Williams? You're not going to respond to that well. I don't care who you are. Goes to the University of South Carolina, starts to finally find himself. You wanted him to have that breakout season during his final year. Obviously, it didn't happen. But then you've always seen those bits of talent there. And the narrative on his attitude, I can guarantee, is completely false. What his attitude is, I don't know. But all the negative stuff, it's just not. You don't stick around in the NFL if you are how they say you are, especially as a backup quarterback.
Absolutely.
And then obviously he has arm talent. It isn't the best, but when you talk about a person who could possibly run an efficient offense, I do think that there's a potential there. And then when it comes to the last player you mentioned, which was, of course, the gentleman that I totally forgot. So who's the last guy you mentioned?
Shador, baby.
Of course, how could I forget? Johnny Unitas Award winner, obviously, at the University of Colorado, had success both Colorado and Jackson State, was coached by Pat Shermer, who was his offensive coordinator at Colorado. So he already comes from an NFL level offense or NFL style offense. So mentally, he's a little bit ahead of the game than some of the other collegiate quarterbacks coming into the league. He played a lot under pressure during his time at Colorado and was still able to make massive throws. And let's not forget, a 10-win season for Colorado. Like we don't talk about that enough. I think it was 10. It might have been 9. Whatever it was. It was more than 8, which is already saying something. The fact that he had a winning season at the University of Colorado is more than enough to, give his resume a shot. Obviously, the situation in Cleveland is a complex one, and we have to wait to see what Kevin Stefanski does in Atlanta before we can really give a true explanation into what the heck that was at the end of the season. But when you're hearing stories that they gave him the wrong play sheet on his wristband, like how does that happen? Genuinely, how does that happen? I'm not saying that Sanders isn't complicit in some of the failures of the Browns, but what I am saying is that there's more than meets the eye in that situation, and it's more than enough for the Rams to consider taking a flyer on him if they choose to do so. Sanders is going to be a little bit tougher because I believe he will be the starting quarterback for the Browns for Todd Monken this season. So this would be a little bit more down the road. But I believe Deshaun Watson's contract is expected to come off the books after this season. And with all that cap space opening up, that may prompt the franchise to maybe go in a different direction totally in a just completely massive rebuild where they try to start fresh if they are unable to find success this season. So those are my quick hits when it comes to the 3 quarterbacks that you mentioned and how they could fit with the Rams. Last thing we're going to talk about is this, and that is, of course, quarterbacks who are currently under contract with the next couple of years that you could see becoming a instant success as a successor for Matthew Stafford.
Oh, man. So I got some fun ones. This is definitely more of a fun conversation. The most popular Rams fan conspiracy theory is the belief that the Cincinnati Bengals are bound to repeat history, because we all know time is a flat circle. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. The Cincinnati Bengals are not the best when it comes to keeping their long-term talent. We see what's happening with Trey Hendrickson. Now, there's always 2 sides to each story, but again, where there's smoke, there's fire. This is the same ownership team that dealt with the Carson Palmer situation, who threatened retirement until he was, forced his way out. You've done a lot on offense, skill-wise, for Joe Burrow, but how are they going to address the offensive line? Is Zach Taylor the guy to really, help him out? Are they going to fill the defense to make him a contender? Because I'm sorry, but if you've got Joe Burrow, arguably a top 5 talent in the NFL in the world, and you got a Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, like you got to figure something out in the AFC North that is really going to be up for grabs this year. If they don't, does Joe Burrow how much does he love Ohio? How much does he want to go play somewhere where he won't get killed and be hurt every single season? Rams, if they have more draft picks, if they have their stuff, they don't trade it away this year. Do they make a run? They say, screw it. let's just do another Stafford level trade. Let's bring in a superstar that is unhappy, like a Joe Burrow. Other names to look out for. Trevor Lawrence had a great year. I know he's got an extension. Salary cap isn't real these days. Like, guys get out of contracts all the time for different reasons. There's a connection with Gladstone there. They're really going to have the inside scoop on what Trevor Lawrence is like. Is he going to be their guy for the next 5 years? We're going to see this year. Another one that I think is there's no reality basis in it at all, but I akin him to the modern day Matthew Stafford. One of the best arm talents, like just a game winner. He's going to play like you can rip his left arm off. He's going to go out in the field and play and try to stiff arm you. He was stiff arming people with a broken hand this past season. Justin Herbert. Harbaugh loves him, but if Justin Herbert keeps just getting beat up, same thing, no success, how happy do you stay in an organization? Like, we've seen, what's the breaking point? Everyone's breaking point is different. You love Los Angeles. I know he's got a fiance or wife that is, Hollywood. You want to stay in LA? Do you make a move to switch rooms, switch bunk beds in SoFi to stay here? There's a lot of different guys that are at the top of the food chain that I think the Rams, like McVay, will make a move for someone, man. Like, they're going to do an FDM Picks 3.0 at some point. Is it right after 2.0? And then the other ones that I think you can run through that make a little bit more sense. Like, I know the Niners will never part from him, but what happens in another year? Is Mac Jones like actually good? Is he legitimate? You got some young guys like, what if JJ McCarthy gets way better and he's young and they like what he shows? There's guys like him that I think you could really seriously take a look at if it's not going to be a rookie in a year or two. But those are some my most fun conspiracy theories of hey, can the Rams do it another time? McVay just avoids rookies forever and ever. He just keeps getting the best quarterbacks and figuring out keeping his boy genius name going. Yeah, I hope that answers the question, but I think there's some guys that to seriously like keep an eye on if trade rumors start buzzing. If any trade rumors start buzzing for those three guys, I'm not surprised if the Rams are knocking at the door as well.
Yeah, and I'll provide my quick hits on them. And you've mentioned a lot of great points, so I'll try and go through them one-on-one. And if I miss the quarterback, please fill me in. So first off, we'll start with Joe Burrow, who makes the most sense. Obviously, everything you just mentioned, and NFL executives told us here at Rams on SI that they believe that had Matthew Stafford retired, the Rams were preparing a massive package to go and trade for Joe Burrow. Obviously, that would be dependent on what the package looks like, Burrow's interest, and also the Cincinnati Bengals. And would they be willing to execute that type of deal, which I don't think they would have been willing to do so at this time. But down the road, it's a little bit different. I believe he's under contract until like 2029 or 2030. I believe his contract runs concurrently with Jamar Chase's, and T. Higgins' deal expires the year before their deal is supposed to expire. I don't know if there's any possibility of a straight-up trade for Burrow, because Burrow, I don't know how he feels about Ohio, but I know he loves his guys, especially on offense, aka Chase and Higgins. That's why those three guys are the three highest paid members of that organization. The thing to look at is this. There's been rumors that there in the NFL that there could be an expansion of tradable first-round picks, going from 3 years to 5 years. How many years out that you can trade first-rounders. In the event that a rumor becomes actuality, I could very much see the Rams in 2 to 3 years making a NFL game-changing trade to acquire both Burrow and Jamar Chase for a plethora of draft picks, including more than 3 or more first-round picks, in order to make that deal happen. Obviously, that would be groundbreaking, game-changing, and there's no basis to say that will happen. I do think that is something you need to monitor, because the Rams have proven in the past, even right now, they have no interest in retaining first-round picks. And understandable. I mean, look at Indiana University, one of the most horrific football programs in existence. Chris Kennedy comes in, uses the transfer portal to his advantage, brings in Curtis Rourke, a 4-year starter at that point at Ohio or something like that, and then obviously takes Indiana to the college football playoffs. Next year brings in Fernando Mendoza, and they win the national championship. First team ever to go 16-0 in college. So there's more than enough to say that this is a route that has proven to be highly successful over a long period of time. Trevor Lawrence is an interesting one because he is tied, of course, not only to Gladstone, but former Rams offensive coordinator, now turned Jacksonville Jaguars head coach Liam Cohen. The only reason I don't see Lawrence making this move is because I just don't see Lawrence leaving the South. I think he loves it down there, and I don't
Yeah.
blame him. He's on a $200+ million contract, pays $0 in state taxes. Obviously, young family down there. His roots are there. I think that he's Jacksonville's guy. And also, the media in Jacksonville, they don't really give you a hard time if you're Trevor Lawrence. Like, all you have to do is be like a little bit decent, and you're golden. And for Lawrence, he's honestly been everything that the Jaguars could have asked for and then some, which is crazy because it's clear times where he's like, "What are you doing?" But for a team like Jacksonville to have a guy win 2 division titles in his first 6 years in the NFL, and then obviously win a playoff game as well, taking the Chiefs in the divisional round to the limit in 2022. Like, why would you get rid of him at this point?
Also, no Waffle House in California. That's a big deal for him. I will say that.
We don't have Waffle House out here, so I mean, I don't know the gloriousness that is that 24-hour golden yellow beef. And the fact that the entire kitchen staff should probably be fighting in mixed martial arts, but that's neither here nor there. Justin Herbert is a very interesting one. Obviously, as you mentioned, loves Harbaugh. He got beat up a lot last year, but they did lose their 2 tackles to injury, so that plays a factor. Mekhi Becton also did not work out in the way. But I think the more important part is Greg Roman is a horrific offensive coordinator, and there's no other way to put it. They brought in Mike McDaniel this year, which I think could be the saving grace for Herbert's relationship with the Chargers, along with, of course, his deep bond with Harbaugh and the fact that he grew up as a Chargers fan. And the Chargers have him under contract for a long time from this point on. But in the same way of Stafford, right? How many years could he go without having success? And it's not that hard to move from where are they, Costa Mesa to Woodland Hills. That's for a quarterback who makes hundreds of millions. That's 1 car drive and 1 call to a moving company, and you're set. So I think that's a legitimate possibility, especially because of the offense the Rams have. But I do think that those affiliations to the Chargers and the fact that the Chargers have not done traditional Chargers things in the past. They haven't been cheap on a head coach. They went out and they got a veteran head coach who they paid a lot of money to. They got a former head coach to be their offensive coordinator who they are paying a lot of money to. They invested millions into their brand new facility. Like, these are things that you would have never expected from this franchise 10 years ago. And that's why I think that Herbert probably sticks it out with them for the long term, at least not to a point where he could potentially be a successor to Matthew Stafford. Who are the other quarterbacks you mentioned? I'm sorry, they're kind of dropping off my dome.
I think that might have been. Oh no, that's who I had, but I missed one. There's another one, just because of the chaos and the circus that is there. I think you are at a point where even the fans are like, all right, he's good, but like, is he the guy? Like, do they just want a fresh start because it's just been 10, then it will be 11 years after this year where like they're not returning to playoff wins with him. Dak Prescott. I think Dak Prescott's, for as much great as he is stat wise, I think he's a little underrated. I think he's outperformed what he's been given in Dallas sometimes, and having dealt with the circus that is Jerry Jones' world, I think that speaks volumes of Dakota Prescott. Reign Dakota Prescott. Another guy that goes the Stafford route. He's closer to that 12-year mark that Stafford did. 11 years. Hey, thank you. Please send me somewhere. Like, I'm done. Like, I need a fresh start for my life. And if you want to bring in the personal life stuff, I know, unfortunately, he had called off his wedding a few weeks ago. Stuff like that, it makes you change your values and where you want to be. And sometimes you need a fresh start out of a state if that's the case. And like you said, West Coast fresh air is wonderful around football season. I will say that. So if Reign Dakota Prescott was coming to Los Angeles, I would be loudly excited about that.
Yeah, and I've heard his name be thrown on a lot. It makes a lot of sense because he's the most Matthew Stafford-like quarterback available. Longest tenured quarterback currently for one team in the NFL, which is a bizarre stat to say considering I remember following him when he was at Mississippi State, right? So like, he's been in the NFL a long, long time. Obviously, the talent is there, the numbers are there, the success is there. I do think while I have had my own personal opinions on Prescott, and the way he takes accountability or lack thereof it, I do think that the fit could be there. And at the same time, who knows? Maybe the burden of being the Dallas Cowboys quarterback changes a person and their mentality, and coming out to Los Angeles could help, loosen them up a little bit. Obviously, Matthew Stafford hasn't looked better, and his teeth haven't been whiter since coming out to Los Angeles. So it does wonders for the entire person and family.
Mhm.
You also mentioned Mac Jones. I don't see Mac Jones actually. Funny enough, if Brock Purdy gets hurt again and Mac Jones has another fantastic start and the 49ers say goodbye to Brock Purdy, I think Purdy has a better chance of being a Rams quarterback than Jones. And the reason is because Brock Purdy, there's more than meets the eye with Brock Purdy. One, there's already the connection because of Nate Schillhouse and Iowa State. But then the second part is when you start looking at how Purdy plays off schedule, there's a lot to love. I look back at the NFC Championship game against Detroit where he was making plays with his feet. There's multiple times where he's able to scramble out of the pocket, kind of dance around a little bit and make a throw. And to me, though, it makes sense for the Shanahan offense because I think that's where he's the most efficient. When you want to talk about being explosive, I think that he could hit another level in this McVay offense. It's not a criticism of the Shanahan offense. It's more the flexibility of the McVay offense to do a lot more than he can with the Shanahan offense because the Shanahan offense is based off running the football so much, right? So you just don't have a natural, throws to, make ridiculous numbers, like to put up ridiculous numbers. But even with that being said, there's a point in time where we were considering him an MVP candidate. For me, when I first started believing in him, it was the 2024 season when the 49ers looked horrific and still seeing what he was able to do despite all those injuries San Francisco had sustained. I think that speaks a lot to the things that he can do. And of course, you talk about, hey, what about his performance against the Seahawks, blah, blah, blah. Styles make fights. And it's clear that the antithesis to Mike McDonald's defense, is the McVay offense. Matthew Stafford plays a massive part in that. I think Brock Purdy could also help fill that gap, of course, if he were to become available, which is probably a fever dream. At this point, Dak Prescott makes a lot more sense. Age, ability, overall football knowledge. Do wonder if there'll be a culture fit, but that's something for the organization to find out. You did mention J.J. McCarthy. No.
That was just a random name I threw out. I've seen enough 9 memes. I'm good.
Yeah,
I'm okay.
I've seen enough memes too. I also saw the Penn State game where they just gave the ball to Blake Corum 30 straight times or whatever it felt like. Like that's not the hallmark of a college passer. I mean, you could say, Michigan has no wide receivers, which is also true, but still. And then also I think Kyler Murray is about to pull Randall Cunningham 2.0 in Minnesota right now. So that's why also I'm not big on McCarthy. There's 2 more quarterbacks that I want to add to our list before we wrap up what has been a ridiculously long episode of this. Okay. That is, of course, Baker Mayfield, because one, obviously the connection is there for the 2022 season. I believe he's set to be a free agent after the season. And based off everything we are seeing in Tampa Bay, wow, no one knows how to obliterate a team more than Todd Bowles. My goodness. Mike Evans wanted out and he left. I think Levante David's about to retire if he hasn't already retired. The success isn't there. There's in-game management where you're just like pulling your hair out. And to me, I thought Schillhouse was a lock for OC this season. Obviously, they went in a different direction. For the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they went in a different direction. But at some point, I think Mayfield is going to be like, I'm done. And he's on a great team deal right now. So I think he's going to look for his money. And I think the Rams would be willing to offer him the money. And, of course, he has, as I mentioned, that established relationship. I think that the only other quarterback, in my opinion, who would make sense in terms of fit, availability, age, and all these other factors is, and you're going to lose your mind when I say this, Jaden Daniels, Washington Commanders. And here's why. I don't believe that he has a long-term future in the nation's capital, and none of it is his fault. I think that last year was a massive asterisk. The Commanders tried to double down, and it didn't help that Daniels was constantly hurt, but their big moves in the offseason did not pay off at all. Deebo Samuel is a free agent right now. Laramie Tunsil, shout out to him. First ballot Hall of Fame bag getter, another massive extension, but I don't think that's going to be enough to elevate this team. Obviously, they got rid of Cliff Kingsbury, So that's
Yeah.
a massive, like, oh, yo, what's going on? And then on top of that, Brian Johnson as well, who I believe is, as we mentioned in a previous pod, who's also an assistant on the Rams, if I'm not mistaken, currently, because he was the assistant head coach. I hope I got the right name.
Which name? Which name?
Brian Johnson, the former Eagles offensive coordinator. I think he's on the
yeah, Brian Johnson is here in LA. Yes.
Yeah. So there's also that connection as well. McVay complimented him tremendously last year at the owners' meetings. And again, the Commanders, I get they're under new ownership, and I get they're trying to build a new stadium where the old RFK Stadium site is, or the RFK Stadium is. And I get they're trying to evolve into this, this new era. But I look at their history of their franchise. I look at the trajectory Dan Quinn is on. I look at the trajectory Jaden Daniels is on. This feels like he's going to get hit more and more. He's going to get hurt more and more, and it's going to be another RG3 situation. But I think that Daniels has enough to rebound. On top of that, obviously, I'm not sure if they're still together, but Juju Watkins, I believe, is his girlfriend out at USC. So obviously the Los Angeles connection is already there. I think Daniels might actually be from the West Coast, if I'm not mistaken, as well.
Played at ASU. I don't remember where he's from, though.
Yeah, but I mean, again, even if you're not from the West Coast, come to the West Coast and see how much you love life.
Yeah, he's from San Bernardino. He's a SoCal guy.
Okay, so he's another Southern California guy. There's the connections, the fit, the styles, and to me, when it comes to arm talent, dual threat ability, and ability to just produce read coverages and honestly be critical on fourth down, which he is one of the best at, it makes a lot of sense. It's not a move that you're going to see next year or the year after, but Daniels is entering the third year of his rookie contract. That means that after this season, Washington is going to have to make two critical decisions. Do they extend him and do they pick up his fifth-year option? If one of those don't happen, I think that this becomes a legitimate possibility for the Rams. But that kind of wraps up my list of potential Stafford successors. Any points you want to add before we get on out of here?
They don't make him like Matthew Stafford anymore, man. That's all I'll say.
Agreed. And there's a reason for that. It's because quarterback development is in the toilet. Coaches are so worried about winning instantly, and who can blame them, that they're willing to put young passers into easy-to-learn systems that do not allow them to grow in terms of reading coverages, playing under center, understanding 5- and 7-step dropbacks, and that is why we're seeing the world for which it is. But a guy like Daniels, whose ability to use his feet makes up for a lot of that, even though there are large portions of the McVay offense in which a quarterback must go under center. So, as you mentioned, Matt Stafford, they don't make him like how they used to, but hey, this is life in the NFL. This has been Brock Vieira for the Los Angeles Rams Insider Podcast. Check out all 3 of our previous videos, of course, on our YouTube page. This has been Pierce DeLuna, First and Tuna. Thank you so much for joining us for this series, and thank you all for watching it. We'll catch y'all next time. Take care.